There are moments when I believe that if I don't stop, I will never truly understand what the world is trying to say to me. Not the loud sounds, not the obvious movements, but the things that are so subtle, so thin, that they almost don't exist if you simply pass by. I remember once, I stood before a stretch of forest, not to explore it, not to capture a beautiful frame, but just to stand there. And strangely, when I stopped trying to look for something, I began to hear more. Not the clear sound of birds, not the rush of wind, but a feeling as if the entire forest was gently falling, layer by layer, very slowly. A fall without sound, yet carrying weight. It did not reach my ears, but touched something deeper. Something I didn't know I was capable of listening with. I looked toward the distant mountains, where the evening light was slowly leaning down. The light was no longer sharp like in the daytime. Everything seemed veiled in a soft haze. But it was exactly that softness that made the scene feel more real, closer, as if the distance between me and the world had quietly narrowed. I was no longer looking at the mountains as an object, but as if I were looking into a part of myself, one I had long ignored while being busy with louder things. Somewhere, a drop of water appeared. I didn't know where it came from or why, and a thin, almost invisible veil slipped gently into my eyes. I couldn't tell if it was emotion or just a natural response. But I knew that in that moment, I softened, not weakened, but released, letting go of a layer of hardness I had carried for too long. I began to wonder why such small things could do what larger things could not. Why a silent forest, a distant mountain, an ordinary evening could make me stop, breathe slower, and feel as if I had touched something deeply real. Perhaps when everything around us is light enough, we can finally hear what is happening within. Perhaps what is quiet is not fragile, but simply refined. So refined that only when we become still can we recognize it. Gradually, I began to see the world as a quiet island. Not a place of isolation, but a space calm enough for everything to exist as it truly is. A surface of water undisturbed, a sky unobstructed, a stillness where even the smallest movement can be seen. And I realized I carry an island like that inside me too. A place I had forgotten for a very long time. A place that, if I dared to return to, might allow me to see more clearly what I am truly feeling, instead of merely reacting out of habit. So I began to wait, not for something specific, but for a small sign, a soft call like a seabird, just enough to stir the still water within me. I realized that sometimes a person doesn't need a dramatic push to change. Just a subtle shift in the right place is enough to set everything in motion. I also waited for a beam of sunlight, not something bright and overwhelming, but something gentle enough to pass through deep water to reach the darkest place within me. I came to believe that true light doesn't simply shine from the outside. It is something that can pass through the layers within us. And for that to happen, perhaps we must first allow ourselves to be still. There were days when I stopped trying to understand everything. I simply stood within a quiet space and accepted that I was in the middle of something. Not fast, not clear, but unfolding. And perhaps this waiting was not meaningless. Perhaps it was the way my heart was learning patience with itself. Then one day, I felt the wind. Not a strong wind, but enough to let me know that I was no longer completely still. And I understood that perhaps it was time to raise the sail. Not because everything had been resolved, but because I no longer wanted to remain where I was. I looked up at the sky, saw clouds reflected on the water, saw the incomplete curve of the moon, saw stars scattered far away. None of them were perfect, yet each carried its own beauty. And I realized, perhaps I do not need to be complete in order to continue. My lost footsteps did not disappear. They remained as part of the journey, but they no longer frightened me the way they used to. They became lighter, as if placed in a space wide enough that they no longer suffocated me. I think healing is not about forgetting, but about changing how we carry what has happened. No longer dragged back, no longer drowned, but walking with it, more slowly, more gently. And then, there was a moment when I saw a shooting star. It did not last long, just a thin streak of light across the night sky. But precisely because it was so brief, it drew my attention more deeply. It did not stay to prove anything, yet it was enough to remind me that even in the longest darkness, there is always a line of light that can appear. I began to understand that hope does not need to be grand. It does not have to change everything at once. Sometimes, it only needs to be enough to keep us from giving up. The seasons pass, each leaving a different trace. Some seasons allow us to bloom. Some make us fall. Some teach us endurance. Some allow us to recover. And all of it, when we look back, carries meaning. Not because it was easy, but because it helped us become someone who understands ourselves a little more. When the wind passes, the sky becomes clearer. Not because everything disappears, but because what is unnecessary has been carried away. And I realized there are winds in our lives like that too. They do not come to destroy, but to cleanse, to return clarity to our minds. And after all of that, I understood that I cannot stay here forever. Peace is not a place to hide. It is a place to prepare. To prepare to move, to go, to turn towards something. To go to a place where the distant wind is, and to meet someone. To me, that sentence is not only about love. It is about daring to step out of one's own safe space after learning how to be at peace within. Because to truly move towards someone, it takes courage. The courage not to wear unhealed wounds as armor. The courage to open without knowing what will happen. Perhaps the person we meet is not just someone else, but a new version of ourselves. A version that is no longer afraid of being hurt, no longer avoiding connection. And if you are somewhere along this journey, standing in a quiet forest beneath a fading evening sky, carrying an unnamed thin veil in your eyes, I just want to say, you don't have to rush. Perhaps you are waiting for something you cannot yet name. Perhaps you are in a silence that confuses you. But maybe, just maybe, that silence is where everything begins. One day you will feel the wind, and you will know it is time to go. Not because you are perfect, but because you have become soft enough, clear enough, and honest enough with yourself.